Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Village Council regular meeting of May 13th, 2025. As is our usual practice, we will begin with the invocation, followed by a Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation will be from Dr. Jonathan Scheller, the senior pastor at the First Baptist Church of Pinehurst, and that will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance from a young man named King Martin McGee, who is in the 6th grade of the O'Neill School, and is the godson of Stan and Jean Bradshaw, two of our residents. So, Reverend, please come forward. Lead us.
Thank you. Let's bow for prayer. Heavenly Father, we come before you today with gratitude, thanking you, God, for the opportunity to meet in this place, Lord. Thanking you for the opportunity to live in this community that we get to call home. Father, we recognize that you are the creator and sustainer of all things. Your word declares in Psalm 24:1 that the earth is yours and everything in it. As we gather tonight and each and every day as we live in this community, we acknowledge that all authority and wisdom come from you. Lord, you call us in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 29, verse 7, to seek the welfare of the city where you have sent us and to pray upon its behalf. So this afternoon we lift up this town, we lift up this village and every person in it. May your hand be upon our leaders, the citizens, and all who labor for the common good. Help us to be faithful stewards of the trust you have put in each one of us. Father, we do pray for wisdom. I pray for wisdom for this council, for our mayor, Lord, for those who work and play in this city and live in this city, Lord. Father, as promised in James chapter 1, verse 5, that God, that we ask for wisdom as you seek to grant us that wisdom, Lord. Father, we're reminded in your word, God, that you are the giver of good things, God, and we recognize you tonight for all that you have done and all that you continue to do for us. Father, you taught us that the greatest among us must be the servant of all. Help us and help this council to lead with humility and compassion, just as you have led us, laying down your life for us. Father, let the decisions made be shaped by truth, guided by justice, and marked by love. As Paul reminds us in Galatians 6:9, let us not grow weary in doing good. God, we pray for unity. God, we pray for understanding. God, we pray for peace. Father, may this meeting be a reflection upon your kingdom where truth and mercy meet in righteousness and peace. Father, thank you for this council, Lord. Bless them and their families for the work they do for us in this village. For it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. King, come on forward. Adjust the microphone as you need to. And lead us, please, in the pledge. The flag is here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, both. Good job. All righty. We will now proceed, as we usually do, with reports from the village manager and members of the council. Doug Wilson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last Friday, we had our Live After 5. We stuck it in between a couple of rainstorms, and it turned out to be a beautiful evening, so we're grateful that that went off well. With all the rain we've been having, we've had quite a few people call with concerns about construction runoff. So we've dealt with this in a number of ways. So DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality, is actually the jurisdiction with authority over this, so we have contacted them, been working with them. But we've also reached out to many of the builders that are typical builders here and asked them to go out, check their sites to make sure their silt fence and things were up. So appreciate the proactive approach that the planning and public service departments have made to deal with that, and I think it's worked out well. And last of all, the number 6 sidewalks are going to start construction this week. Actually, not so much construction, but the contractor will be out staking the location where the sidewalk will go. So all the residents will know, hey, I have a bush in that area, maybe I should deal with that, or a sprinkler or something like that. I think that'll help avoid problems with the project in the future. So, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. I have a few items to report on. On April 26th, I was invited to address the celebration of the military child at the community center. It was coordinated by the Kiwanis and others, and this was a group of young kids with their parents who were all serving our country, and it was a great day in the village. It was held at the community center, and congratulations to the folks on the village staff who worked on that. It was really well done, so thank you. Two, I attended the mayors and managers meeting that was held on April 29th. As I think you know, this year, or actually starting last year, the mayors and managers of the municipalities in Moore County, of which there are 11, had decided to come together from time to time to discuss some issues that interfere with what we all believe is the ability for us to manage our communities. This has to do largely with some pending state legislation, and we talked about the reasons that we don't want to see the ETJ authority removed from us, and the problems with the interfering with the traditional downzoning authority that we have. We will continue to meet from time to time, and you all may have noticed that the letter that the mayors sent to the Board of Commissioners for Moore County was acted upon. The County Board of Commissioners forwarded the letter to the delegation and supporting the intent of our letter, which was a good accomplishment. Sort of the first time the mayors were able to, I think, convince the county commission that this is important to all of us. On April 30th, myself and some of my colleagues attended the volunteers luncheon, the Pinehurst Volunteers Luncheon, and where a individual was recognized as Volunteer of the Year. He happens to be sitting out here in the audience. I see him, Kevin Fitzpatrick, the head of the Pinehurst number 6 Community Association. And it was a good crowd, and the village manager, there's a big photo in the paper of you two, so good coverage by the press on that. On April 30th, I attended along with my colleague, Barbara Ficklin, we attended the flag raising at the Outpost, otherwise known as the Roast Office there. I think it had been, I don't know how many years since they put the flag back up on their flagpole. 10 years, thank you, Barbara. And I don't know, there were about 15, 20 people there, and it was a nice event, community event, all our friends and neighbors. And they do a terrific job there. If you haven't had a chance to visit the Outpost, the Roast Office, it's a worthwhile stop. And lastly, with many of my colleagues here, we attended the spring garden party held at the Village Arboretum. That's put together by the Village Heritage Group and so forth. And it was a well-attended event, and we avoided any rain at all. So anyway, that's all I have to report at this moment. I'll ask Dr. Morgan for his, go right ahead, sir.
Thank you. A couple different things here. Last week of April, I attended the CPRC meeting, the Central Pines Regional Council. And we had a variety of different things that we covered out there. One of the major items was the budget for the coming year. And there are a significant amount of budget cuts that will be coming in there, and they're actually going to be reducing some of the staff. Some of the national fundings have decreased, or we're not sure if they're going to be coming in or not. None of these should affect Pinehurst proper, though, as to what is going on. Did find out during that meeting that in 2029, we're going to have the International University Sports Federation, which is known as FISU. I imagine that's because it's said in French. But they will be having their World Summer Games in Raleigh. This will be from July 11th through the 22nd. Pretty big deal. Happens every 2 years, but it's an Olympic-style event for college athletes, and they bring in folks from all over the world. So we'll have certainly over 100 countries represented, and it will be in Raleigh, so close by to us. It will not be conflicting with the U.S. Open because it's going to be July 11th through the 22nd, and the Open is the June 14th through 17th, so we don't have to worry about conflicts at the airport there. But we have a pretty big event coming in there in Raleigh, so folks want to join that. And unfortunately, do not have a golfing event. We did address that because we feel they should have a golfing event, being that we're so close to Pinehurst. But they did opt to potentially bring some of their folks down to play some golf, but other than that, I'd like to also report that this past weekend, we had the Miss Senior America North Carolina pageant at the Bradford Performing Arts Center over at Sand Hills Community College, and our own Pinehurst Martha Merman completed her reign of being Miss Senior America North Carolina, and so she surrendered her crown to a new lady who is not from Pinehurst, but that's okay. She's a very talented lady who will represent North Carolina for us. But congratulations to Martha for completing her year on that. But that's all I have at this point in time.
Okay, Dr. Moore, what's the precise date of that event in Raleigh?
July 11th through 22nd, so it's 11 days.
Of which year? No.
2029.
2029, okay.
It'll be the same day as giving you plenty of time to plan for it, Pat. So, well, one of the big parts in here that we're looking at was just to make sure there wasn't any conflict with the Open, and we did address that to make sure it didn't, and
Okay.
we're clear that way.
Thank you. Thank you for getting it on our calendars, too.
Thanks.
John Taylor.
I also attended the Friends of the Arboretum Spring Garden Party event, and I was particularly taken toward the end about the degree to which, in addition to just building the facility at the Arboretum, what have you, they have established and continue to maintain a pollinators garden. This is something, butterflies nationwide are under threat. They're very important as a source of propagating all kinds of plants, both foodstuffs and others. And the interesting thing is the interest that children have if they go wandering up there when someone happens to be there in what is going on. So I thought that was an interesting sidelight. I attended the SMPO technical committee meeting last Wednesday, I think it was, and they continue to move forward. I think most particularly, and something I think we're talking about later tonight, is some of the carbon reduction issues.
Yep.
And I had a question for Doug, if now is an appropriate time.
Go ahead.
As a developer comes in, whether they're building a single home or more homes, and they work with our planning department, how does that interface with the DEQ in terms of stormwater issues, runoff, and what have you? I wasn't clear on, they may be the regulating authority, but how does that interface with our planning department?
Yeah, so they are supposed to apply for a permit directly from DEQ, and we notify them of that. It's we've talked about, can we make it a formal, before you get a building permit from us, you have to show that you've already received that, and there might be some legal issues with that. So right now, we've just been going with the approach of notifying them that they need to apply to DEQ.
Thank you. Nothing further from me.
Okay, yes. Barbara Ficklin.
Thank you. On April the 28th, the Pinehurst business partners were treated to a tour at Misty Morning Farm, which is one of 5 ostrich farms in the eastern United States. It was fascinating. We had a tour, and an ostrich obligingly laid an egg for us, which was about the size of a football. And interestingly, they told us that someone who weighed 250 pounds could stand on that egg and not break it. No one tried it, but ostriches don't give up their eggs easily. So anyway, it's very interesting. It's a wonderful place. If you ever have a chance to get up there, it's worth seeing. They also served a wonderful little buffet of hors d'oeuvres with ostrich meat, which is delicious. As Pat mentioned, on April 30th, I attended the flag-raising ceremony at the Outpost, as well as the Champions Luncheon at noon that same day. Congratulations, Kevin, to you and to all the volunteers who work so hard to help us stay the vibrant community that we are. And thanks to the staff for graciously serving a wonderful meal. From the Beautification Committee, which met on May 5th, thanks to the volunteers who assisted Public Works on the litter sweep effort that was collecting litter throughout, I guess it was a DOT-inspired event. Downtown Planting Day was supposed to be this week. This is the Pinehurst Pinehurst Garden Club, sorry. It has been postponed from this week and will be held on Monday, the 19th at 9:30. Also attended the Village Heritage Foundation party, a lovely event at the Timmel Pavilion, which is a beautiful, beautiful place to wander around and relax. One last reminder, at our last meeting, I believe we passed a resolution to honor our police force. And this is actually National Police Week, I believe. And so keep that in mind. The idea is to commemorate and thank our police officers for their valor and their responsibility in keeping us safe and secure. So when you see a police person, please say thank you. And that's it for me.
Good reminder, and if the proclamation hasn't gone up on the website, Doug, maybe you can work on that. I didn't even notice.
I'd have to double check too, yeah.
Okay, no problem. Jack Farrell.
Yeah, the only thing I would mention is that we had a meeting of the Fort Bragg Regional Land Use Advisory Commission last week, the Board of Directors. Other than the normal business, there was an active discussion from both mayors and director of plannings in various counties about the new legislation, or the legislation being considered in the state legislature, and to the extent that could be of an issue for both the counties, the cities that were represented there, and also the Regional Land Use Advisory Commission, in the sense that they're a little reluctant to be put in a position to be sued, given that they could be party to a civil suit, which I think is one of the items that may be in one of those bills. So that was an active discussion. Later this week, we actually have a meeting of the full board, or the full membership of the Regional Land Use Advisory Commission in Southern Pines, where the Director of Planning in Southern Pines is going to review the comprehensive plan for us. So that could be of very interesting subject matter, for at least for me in particular. So looking forward to that. That's it.
Thank you, Jack. All righty, that concludes the reports. Let's move forward with item 4 on the agenda. This is a motion to approve the consent agenda. All items listed below are considered routine or have been discussed at length in previous meetings and will be enacted by one motion. No separate discussion will be held unless requested by a member of the Village Council. Under item A, we have for approval the regular meeting minutes of April 22nd, the work session meeting minutes of April 22nd, and the closed session meeting minutes of April 22nd. I do have a question on item B, so if we can have a motion on those, and then we can discuss.
Before we move to a motion, is item B included, or is the consent agenda just items A, 1 through 3?
I took it as included.
Yeah, B was intended to be included.
Okay, all right, well, so we can approve that, or we can go to item B, and I can just raise the few questions I have.
Why
We
don't
could
you
do
just raise the
questions first, or,
Yeah, just raise the questions.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I spent years with records management responsibility in the federal government, so I went through this interestingly.
Well, then, a point of order, can we approve items number A, 1, 2, and 3, and then later on approve item number B?
Yeah, so
separately?
technically, yes, we should, if we're removing the item B from the consent agenda, we should do that.
I didn't say
by-
we're removing it from the consent agenda. I said we're going to approve it separately. Is that
That's fine as
possible?
well.
That's
I mean,
fine.
You okay with that?
Okay, we have a motion?
I would move to approve items A, 1 through 3 from the consent agenda, which are all considered routine.
Second.
Motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so approved. Now, approval of the 2021 general records and program records retention schedule and the 2009 public libraries records retention schedule. This is somewhat routine. This is something governments do. I was curious, do we have a designated records management officer in the village?
you do.
Am I
That would
looking
be-
at it?
No, that would be Shannon.
Shannon.
Our village
That was
clerk.
one of my other questions. Is Shannon involved? Well, that's good. That's all comforting.
Yeah, yes, it should be that Shannon is in charge more than me.
Okay. And I had a question on the accounts receivable. There was I think it was a 3-year record retention on that. And I don't know why, it struck me as a short amount of time.
That would be, yeah, if we received a bill, we'd have to keep that bill for 3 years before we could destroy it.
Okay, so if we pay the bill, which we usually do right away, it doesn't matter, we just
Yeah.
retain it for 3 years. All right, that was helpful.
Because it already passed through the audit process and was considered valid.
Okay,
Yeah, that's a good point, that after 3 years, hopefully, the audit has been completed.
and the last question I had was, I had 2 questions. What does the acronym LME stand for? I tried
Is
to.
that within the library one? I don't recall.
All right, someone can let me know that later. It's not important. I just noticed it, and I couldn't find it in a glossary or anything. And the other question had to do with e-records. Is there a particular challenge there? I mean, we're all advised about how we have to be responsible for the records, and of course, the items that we utilize our public account for, our village account for, is all captured. But is there anything new in the world of e-records that someone wants to mention, or?
Yeah, so we, about a year ago, we started the process of going through digital imaging of our records, and so as part of that, we'll have to bring a more formal policy to the board to approve, and from that will allow us to keep records digitally rather than in paper, and then we could destroy those. So that's an upcoming policy that will come before the council.
But presumably, storing records digitally is easier, requires less space, et cetera, et cetera.
Certainly a lot safer, and it won't be damaged by water or fire. Yeah.
Okay. All righty. If anyone would like to make a motion.
I had one other
Oh,
question.
you have a question too? Go ahead.
Why are we now, 16 years later, approving the public library's records? Should we expect to approve the 2010 next year? That seemed unusual to me.
So these are actually approved a few years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and then we heard back from the state archivist, and there were some issues, and they're like, oh, you need to kind of adjust this. So mostly with the number of days or number of years that we had retained things. So there was a couple that we didn't fill in the blanks when we approved it, so we have now done that with, well, if you approve it tonight.
But do we have to retain any sort of records based on the operation of our library longer than we have to retain business records of the village? Is that the statutory requirement?
I don't believe it has to be longer. It's just a different law or ordinance that required it.
Unusual.
I was impressed with the way it was laid out, citing the particular statute in the state that was responsible for us having to do this. So that was a well-done work product, so appreciate that from staff. All right, anything else?
I'm very impressed that you read the document.
11 years of records management.
I would now move to approve the records contained item 3B as part of the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we've adopted that. Let us move on to item number 5. We've ended the consent agenda, and I don't know if we have anybody who wants to make any public comments. Shannon, do we? Anybody sign up? No. Okay, and while that's being checked on, if you didn't sign up and you still want to make a public comment, please come forward, identify yourself, and make your public comment right there at the microphone. None? Hearing none? Seeing none? Okay, the public comment period is now closed. Now we go on to regular business. Okay. First item on regular business is a review and discussion of pending legislative bills with potential impact on the village of Pinehurst. Obviously, there's been already some discussion about the amount of legislation that is touching not only us, but other municipalities, including all our neighbors here in Moore County. And many of us are following that as the legislative session moves on. So, which is why I asked this to be added. Now, I realize we thought we'd have some guidance and overview from our village attorney. We don't right now, but if there's a question regarding an open meeting for him to discuss it in, we can have this, we can have our own discussion now, but we can also then move to a closed meeting next meeting.
Yeah, if there were any items that we thought, might have legal ramifications for us in the future, and we want to discuss that in closed session, we certainly can do it with legal counsel next meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's do that.
Yeah, I think we just didn't want to, give away attorney-client privilege by discussing something in open session now that, might not necessarily need to be done in an open session.
Okay, we will plan for that. In the meantime, we can briefly discuss these pending pieces of legislation which touch on us and other municipalities. Earlier, I mentioned that the mayors and managers had a get-together. There were a handful of bills that made them a little nervous. One was HB 765, which involved statewide density mandates and overriding local zoning. It also would have put at risk or subject staff, as well as elected officials, to certain legal possibility challenges. I thought that would be an unnecessary chilling effect on both staff and village council members. So the only update I can bring, other than the continued opposition I hear from my fellow mayors, is that it's not moving as some had thought it would move. And we are not alone in Moore County of having real concerns about the impact of a bill like this on the way we govern and lead the jurisdiction. So I don't know if people have other thoughts on 765. I encourage them to speak out.
Well, there's any number of different things in there. I mean, just to pick out one, I think that it also changes the deadlines as far as the planning department's ability, how long they have to react to an application to determine that it's complete. I think that's one of the things. And then there's I've read this wrong, but there was a 90-day approval deadline also, which sometimes site plans and other development plans take a little longer than 90 days to get through the process for any number of different reasons. And these deadlines can be problematic.
And I would think particularly for some of the smaller communities, may not have full-time planning staffs and what have you, be very difficult for them to do proper due diligence and arrive at a decision in that time frame.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think we already meet all those standards already. But this bill was originally created to address the housing shortage in the state. And basically what it is the wish list of the building community, what they wish would be in there. And basically it would make all regulatory rules the same across the state. So, if you're building a house here versus, Asheville, you'd be building under the same regulations. And so that obviously makes it a lot easier for a builder, but it also takes away all authority locally from us. So that's that's a big reason why we would oppose this. Also, the number of forced dwelling units per acre would be, I think, a big concern here. You already mentioned the legal risks. Overall, there's been a lot of pushback on this, and it's been very contentious in the committee hearing so far, so it's something to keep an eye on. It did not pass crossover, but it was added it had a fee provision added, so it can still be brought up and still potentially move forward.
I would like to point out one thing that I find really awful about this bill. Item number 3, B, moratoriums and public hearings would be harder to justify, cutting out residents' voices from the development process. That is undemocratic. We are by the people. We are a government by the people, for the people. cut them out or make their input silenced in any way is undemocratic.
I agree with that also. I second that.
Is this the bill that also has the tiny house provision?
Sorry, what was that?
Is this the bill that has the tiny house provision?
I do
can't
not
remember.
recall.
I thought that's a separate bill.
I thought it was too,
Is that the separate bill?
but
Okay.
And this, I thought, had the provision where local officials had legal.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So the North Carolina League of Municipalities is strongly opposed to this, and they're putting all their efforts behind it. The North Carolina Association of Public Planners or something, there's an acronym that goes with that. They are also opposed to this and doing their best to lobby against the ill effects that would bring.
Okay.
And I'd just like to remind everybody that Neil Jackson is our representative in the House, and Tom McGinnis is our representative in the Senate. So if you feel strongly about any of these, I encourage you to reach out to them. I'm sure they'd like to hear from you.
Good advice. Okay, let's go on to the other bill. This is one that we've dealt with in the past. By way of a brief history, it was last year there was a bill put in that was going to eliminate the ETJ authority only in Moore County, and that created quite a stir in Moore County. And it also educated a lot of people about what the ATJ is, because most people didn't know about it. And now it's a bill that is statewide in its reach. And I, for one, I never heard of an ETJ until I moved to North Carolina, so I can.
Because it only exists here.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's unique, but as I got to understand it, I understood it, and I think it served us well. And I think our residents, or the people who live there, enjoy it because they made a decision to live there. But it would have I think would have a horrible impact because it would undermine our ability to manage growth. We know we're going to have growth. We don't have many options, many tools in the toolbox to manage growth. We have our zoning authority, and we have the ETJ authority. So we want to, hug those two things very closely. The only other comment I'll make about it is the last thing I was able to track down on it is they've amended a bill to exempt counties that have a population of more than 70,000 from losing their ETJ authority. So I don't know if that's going to end up being the vehicle that moves, but that, of course, would protect us.
Yeah.
So
There was this bill, there was another one with ETJ elimination. From my review of it today, I think both of those did not make it through crossover. So as of now, I don't think there is a bill out there that is likely to be passed that would eliminate ETJ authority.
But, yeah, you never know what they can, as we know
You
from
can always
last
add it
time.
on something weird, yes.
Yes, okay. Any other comments about that?
I would just mention, apropos of this generic topic, that at a Moore County Commissioners work session 2 to 3 weeks ago that I attended, at which Representative Jackson was there, he said to the commissioners that they should count on ETJ going away. He said, I don't know whether it's in 2 years, 7 years, or 20 years, but that was his sense of the direction the political wind was blowing in Raleigh. So the fact that this didn't make crossover suggests to me that there are other
Right.
countercyclical winds possibly, but he did say that.
Like the earlier bill, we are not alone in this little effort. There's 500-plus municipalities in the state, and this has bigger impact on some than others, but we're certainly one of them. Okay.
So Senate Bill 587, clarifying nonconforming uses. This one is the only one that we are going to cover tonight that did make crossover, and that is good news. This, one clarifies nonconforming uses and outlines that, and by so doing, it will alleviate the downzoning issue that was created last December. So this is their bill to address this, and we already have nonconforming ability within our ordinance, so it's not going to really affect us in a negative way. I think this is just a positive bill for the Village of Pinehurst.
Well, that's good to know. And it's good that it did make crossover. We'll have to watch that, okay. Any comments or thoughts from fellow council members on that? Okay.
Is this the bill that's going to negate some of the issues that were, okay.
Yep.
You say it didn't make crossover, so.
This one did.
Did, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't.
There was also I believe, House Bill 24 that Representative Jackson referenced at the meeting I mentioned a minute ago, that he thought would repeal those provisions that did not deal with Western North Carolina relief. And
Yeah. I could look up House Bill 24, but this is the bill that, people are pushing to get approved, so.
All righty. Next bill, Doug, you've been following this
Senate
one
Bill
along?
688, Local Government Land Use Reform, did not make crossover. So this was another ability, or bill intended to make it easier to build houses. So this did not pass. I think it's dead, and I don't see this moving forward at all.
How would that actually impact us?
Yeah, so the dwelling units doesn't impact us, but like if some of the parking or number of parking spaces could be required, so that was
that's the
this
parking
bill.
one. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
This expand middle housing bill also did not pass, so this would have forced us to allow duplexes, triplexes in any residential zones.
This is the one that has a definition of middle housing?
Yeah.
And this is a bill that would allow us, is the word there is allowable, right?
Yeah, it would force us to allow them. So,
Oh,
so you would have to allow a triplex in every residential zone.
okay. Thank you. I see the distinction. All right. Next item. Oh, this is the dwelling units.
Yeah, Senate Bill 495, accessory dwelling units. This one probably wouldn't have had a lot to do with us because we already allow accessory dwelling units. But again, it didn't make past crossover, so I think we are good to kind of write this one off.
Okay. Any other comments on that one? Nope, go right ahead.
Senate Bill 499, housing near job, which would have allowed a residential unit to be built in any zone, whether that's commercial or industrial.
Rest.
The intent that you could have your apartment very close to your industrial job, that was the idea.
no, it didn't make crossover, but hypothetically, that would mean that you wouldn't have to change zoning. You could just do it.
Here in Pinehurst, almost every one of our zoning areas allows residential, so I don't think it would be a huge impact. Like hotels doesn't, but those are just a few small parcels, so.
Okay.
But yeah, again, it's dead, so I don't think we need to worry about
So
it.
what is in the air or in the water that this year suddenly all these bills related to similar issues appeared out of?
Yeah, I think the housing crisis statewide is what has been pushing all of this.
That's the overarching
Yeah,
issue.
and then also addressing the downzoning issue that was made in December. There were a lot of bills, like 23 bills specific to that.
That's right. Okay.
But in one sense, the state is responding to a happy problem. It's growing. People want to move here. They got to have someplace to live. But the way that this has been going about is,
Just let them build a house anywhere they want.
Yeah.
That's one way to address it, yeah.
Okay. This is the other ETJ one.
Yeah, so this one didn't make it either. Any questions on this?
No. Anybody have any other comments they want to share? Or? No. That's a good overview, and we'll look forward to with a legal education we can have.
Yeah,
down
so
the road.
real quick, the short-term rental one also did not make crossover.
Right. One thing to keep in mind is that when something doesn't make crossover, it makes it a little higher hill to climb, but like many things, they can end up in various vehicles on New Year's Eve, so we just
A
have to
rider to the omnibus bill?
Yes, so we just have to stay alert. And Dr. Morgan's advice, I think, is good to people who are listening or watching. All right. All right, I think we're done with that discussion. Let us go to the 2025 Quarterly Strategic Operating Plan update for the quarter that ended March 31st, 2025. I assume that's
The
You or Dana?
quarterly, the SOP update is me, and then Dana will be doing the financial update.
Okay,
quarterly.
go right ahead.
So, I want to review our balanced scorecard goals, and actually, I'm not going to go into detail. You've probably had a chance to look at these. If there are any questions, feel free to ask, but I did not see anything that was alarming, nothing that we weren't really watching already. So I'm not going to go into detail unless you want to ask me a specific question on the balanced scorecard.
No, I didn't see anything that was very different from past.
The 2024 number is the full year, is not calendar year, that's fiscal year, is that correct?
That's correct. So if there are no questions on that, I'll quickly review our initiative action plans that we have made progress on in the last quarter. Just so you are aware, this is the strategy map, and our IEPs are down here. And these are a list of them, and we'll go through them one by one. The PDO update, so we have made a lot of progress in the last quarter. So we had our steering committee. They've been meeting. They have met with the consultant. Staff has met with the consultant quite a bit. The consultant has sent us a draft of a few chapters that staff is reviewing. So we're making progress. Everything's on schedule. We're looking to wrap this whole thing up for a vote by October of this year. So in the summer months, we'll hold some public hearings, and that's the plan. So it'll be a busy few months for Alex and team.
Okay, thank you.
Redevelopment of Village Place. We'll talk about this more in detail, but a few updates. We've had meetings with some of the local owners, and you're aware that we are working with the county to relocate their EMS buildings. So more to be discussed on this later in the meeting. But are there any questions?
What precisely is the status of the swap with the EMS facility? I thought that was done.
So the county approved it last month sometime.
Yeah.
So their attorneys are drafting the.
Okay, so
So
lawyers are
once
involved.
that's approved, we'll have to bring it to you. Also, we need to clarify that the zoning, amend the zoning so that we can allow a public safety building.
Okay,
Really, that's prohibited, but I don't see that being an issue.
no, thank you.
The Givens Memorial Library and Tufts Archives, sorry, the Given Library.
Right.
So we've talked about the stormwater issue, and our staff came up with a great proposal workaround for this, and the engineering team with the architect is working on drafting that up, and we should have a workable solution in the near future.
Do you care to speculate on cost?
If anything, I think it should decrease the cost of the overall project because the stormwater retention is so much less on site, and we're just filtering around the area.
And that site plan will be sent out with the bid package for bid, okay?
Third fire facility, again, we're talking about this later in the meeting, so I won't really dwell on it here. And multimodal transportation, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee kind of got reconstituted in the last quarter. They've been meeting. We have a draft implementation plan, and we have been looking at grants to apply for, and we have talked to the SMPO about getting funding for projects. So this is moving along and gaining momentum, I would say, under the new BPAT. And the retrofitting of the athletic turfs is complete with the synthetic turf being installed on Rassy Wicker Park. So great job to the Parks and Rec team. Looks great. I had a lot of fun playing with all the little kids. So. And short-term rental monitoring and compliance. We've talked about this quite a bit. So we are monitoring. We have identified those that we think are in violation and are working towards getting them into compliance. We sent out a couple hundred letters a few weeks ago. We've been getting pretty good feedback on that. We have had people say, oh, I didn't know. We have adjusted our advertisements, things like that. So I think we're making progress in this area as well. some other significant projects. We're working on downtown parking. We'll be having new poles installed and new signage. Hopefully that all works out so we can start with our July 1st enforcement of time parking. Document imaging is something we're working on, particularly in the Human Resources Department. That's kind of our guinea pig where we're going to make sure it works there and then spread out to other departments. Highway 5 improvements, we've been talking to DOT about their plans, and even bigger story, the traffic circle, we hope to see in the next month or so a draft plan from DOT on that.
On Highway 5, Doug, what's the scope of the improvements?
Yeah, so the project currently underway is through Aberdeen up to Blake Boulevard. So that is going to be under construction, intended to be finished in late 2028. The project from Blake Boulevard to NC 211, that is currently funded only for design. The construction portion of it has not been funded by a DOT.
Doug, it had been funded,
Yeah,
it has
and they
been
removed
pulled
it.
back to a lower category, saying that is now engineering only. It will have to be rescored and resubmitted in STIP 8.0.
That's
And
correct.
that's, the SMPO will be quarterbacking that.
Yes.
All right.
And timekeeping and the lights at Cannon Park are complete, so we cross those off.
And on the downtown parking, I think we talked about a sort of a rollout process as we get closer, so you'll figuring that out, I guess.
Yeah, we will certainly make sure that no one is surprised when we start writing tickets. So we let all businesses and residents downtown know about it, and we'll even have a few weeks of a grace period where, reminder tickets rather than actual tickets.
Have we been receiving applications for the part-time position that was approved?
Yes, they held interviews today, and they'll have another round of interviews later this week.
Great progress. Questions or comments for Doug? No? All right. We can go on to item C, quarterly financial statements as of 9 months ended on March 31st, 2025. So I guess that's Dana.
Yes. Good evening, Council. I'm sure you noticed that your financial statements were significantly in a significantly smaller format and fewer pages this quarter. Something new that I wanted to do that Doug had given me the blessing for. So I appreciate any feedback you may have on whether you prefer this over the 12-page packet plus a memo plus a presentation, just trying to consolidate and simplify what you're provided. So we'll start with we're going to kind of go down each column and across with the cash and investments. Actually, first, just kind of overall, we're in a really good financial position as we typically are. The revenues and expenditures are on track to meet the estimates that we used as kind of a basis for the FY26 budget. Nothing concerning at this point. And as Doug just presented, we have, I think, one of the most exciting things about FY25 is the amount of progress that we are making on some of these projects that have been years in the making. I think we're making good progress on the more complex ones and checking things off the list that out of all the items that we wanted to complete in FY25. With cash and investments, overall it has increased $2.1 million or 8% over last year. That's primarily due to the FY24 surplus, but that's offset by higher expenditures through March 31st compared to last year. Our cash and investment balance trend and investment allocation is pretty much spot on from last year, and our yield percentage is right in that target benchmark of the federal funds rate that the NCCMT kind of tracks. So everything is looking good with our cash and investment balances. For the general fund balance sheet, our cash and investments are the key driver of the increase in the total assets. Our due from other agencies also increased quite a bit. That is primarily due to $97,000 more in sales tax receivables, as well as $61,000 more in the sales tax that the village pays that will be refunded by the Department of Revenue next fiscal year, and that is primarily because of the sales tax that we paid for the synthetic turf field in the first quarter. Our fund balance, those categories, the restricted fund balance increased the most, primarily the stabilization by state statute. That increased about 1.5 million. That encumbrances are a factor in that calculation, and as of March 31st, we had about 1.4 million encumbered for PAL bill funds, and that's what, just based on the timing, really drove that up. As of March last year, we had a lot more of the PAL bill funds spent by that point in time.
I was going to ask a question. I noticed that the Powell bill was close to zero. Where was that?
And the expenditures,
Yes.
yes.
And I was wondering, is that traditionally they wait to the last quarter, or how does this work?
I'd have to look back at previous years. I think usually by March there probably is at least some money spent. It depends on the timing of the projects. Mike may be able to speak to that better. I think last year, I believe we had made sure projects were done earlier in the fiscal year in advance leading up to the open.
Okay.
But the work is being done, and the funds will be spent before the end of the fiscal year. Yeah.
Yes, last year, we actually, if you remember, did some paving work in downtown, so that work was done in October of 24, I believe, so fiscal year 24, October 2023, so some was spent before then. This year, contractor waited until the end. Work was done in February and March, but he waited until the end to actually submit us an invoice, so we paid, I believe, over $1 million in April. So that has been paid for, is just a Q4 expense, not a Q3 expense.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right, then in the fund balance, if we go back to that fund balance section, please, that's okay. The fund balance appropriated, you can see is significantly higher. That is was what was planned for in the FY25 budget to fund the $2.8 million for the library transfer, the turf, the synthetic turf, which was $1.4 million, and some of the other significant capital projects that we had this year. Plus, we had $1.4 million in reappropriations that increased that fund balance appropriated number. And then unassigned decreases as a result of the other categories increasing. Unassigned is kind of what's left over once you identify the other categories.
Appropriated means that it's been placed in a project, a capital project account, is that right?
For fund balance appropriated there, that just means what we have budgeted in this fiscal year as of March 31st as the fund balance appropriation to balance the budget.
Into a project?
Not necessarily.
No, not necessarily.
It's just been, you'll have to help me with this, obviously.
Yes, so within the budget, the fund balance appropriation ends up being what is needed to balance the budget. The reason it's so large in FY25 is because of having some significant non-recurring expenditures on the expenditure side,
Okay.
Which were, the most notable ones are the $2.8 million other financing use, which is the transfer to the capital project fund for the library, the turf project.
We haven't necessarily actually spent that money, though, is that correct?
We have not actually had to draw from fund balance yet
Okay.
to fund it. We have spent the money, or
Obligated money.
as of this week, we did the transfer to the library capital project fund from the general fund. So those funds have been spent, but if you look at the general fund budget section, you can see as of March 31st, at least, we still have a $5.5 million surplus of revenues over expenditures. So we're still at a point so far this fiscal year where we have not actually spent more than we have brought in revenues. It's only if our actual revenues are less than our expenditures, where we have a net decrease in fund balance, that we are truly using fund balance to pay expenditures. Okay.
What section? Do you
All
want?
right, now we'll go to the top of the center column. Just highlights of a few of our other funds. The Library Expansion Capital Project Fund, Doug just gave the update in terms of where we are at with that. And we did, this week, transfer the $2.8 million that was appropriated in the FY25 budget to transfer from the general fund to the capital project fund, kind of advance funding the construction.
That is regardless of whether we actually spend a penny of that. We may not complete the process to award a contract before the end of the fiscal year.
Correct. Doug and I had talked about this. We felt kind of from a budget to actual perspective, it's cleaner if we intended to fund that in this fiscal year, we may as well do that. Plus, the Library Expansion Fund will benefit from additional investment earnings by having more cash in that fund, because we allocate the investment earnings based on the cash balance in each fund.
Correspondingly, the village will have less income. We've transferred that income on
The general fund will have less, but then in the future, there's more investment income to offset future transfers to fund the library project. The SMPO fund has about $30,000 in expenditures through the third quarter. All of that is recognized as revenues based on the proportion of federal grants and member dues that will be billed at the end of the year. All right, then we'll go to the ad valorem taxes at the bottom of that column. Yep.
The accrued vacation, that's a cash value, I assume, for everybody?
Yes, yep, based on people's balances,
Okay.
vacation balances as of March 31st.
That's increased.
And
Yes.
Go ahead. On the pension liability one, I'm trying to understand what our liability is on that.
So we've recognized the amount that the state does, has an actuary perform all the calculations that are required and allocates them to each of the members. And so we record basically what that state audit report tells us we need to record, and it's only updated at year end. So that 8.4 million-ish number for March 31st of 2025 is still the same balance it was as of June 30th, 2024, because it's only done annually.
Some kind of present value calculation?
Yes, it's an actuarial calculation in accordance with GASB standards. Our actual liability on an ongoing basis is to make the payments to the pension fund for the required employer contribution and anything that employees choose to have contributed from each payroll.
Okay, so
And the employer contribution is a set rate each year.
when an employee retires from our government or other ones in the state, the checks come from the state, am I correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, they come from the pension
But
fund.
the money that has been put into that has been some contributed by the employee and then some sort of match of something from the employer?
So, yeah, it's not a match, but it's contributed based on the percentage that we are told we need to contribute each fiscal year.
Okay.
Yes.
I understand.
that 8.4 million is a non-cash item. It is an accounting entry
Correct.
over which we have virtually zero control. We are given a number, that's the number.
Yep. Yes, and we're making our contributions, and so that is, from a cash basis, that's our obligation, is to make the contributions each payroll.
And we would be hard-pressed to dispute that number anyway. The calculation is sufficiently complex and involves things we can't put our hands on.
Correct, and it's done for the pension plan as a whole. It is not done just for us. And just as a note, that pension liabilities number, the majority of that is for the local government employees retirement system, but there is a portion, I think it's about $1 million or so of it, is for the law enforcement officers' special separation allowance, and that is specific to the village, and we do pay that portion directly to the LEOs that have retired and are receiving that benefit. But the vast majority of that number is the Elgers. All right, then on the ad valorem taxes, so our total real property valuation this year ended up being about $50 million more than what we had planned for in the budget. So that did yield about $100,000 more in tax revenue, over $100,000. We adjusted the budget up for that at the mid-year amendment, and we are, you can see our collection percentage is very consistent with what we have achieved in previous years. So no issues there with meeting that budget. And the motor vehicles is on track to exceed what we had budgeted this year.
The increase in real property is due to either new construction or certain types of renovations?
Yes.
That are perceived to increase the value of the existing property?
Yes. Yeah, I did actually look at that because it was pretty significant, and there were a number of neighborhoods that had pretty significant. Royal Oak had many properties that were added in, it would be in 2023, that were constructed in 2023 for tax year 24. Pine Wild had several, the East Lake Cottages, and there were some others in Linden Road Estates. They were kind of scattered throughout the village for the most part, but yes, what I got from the tax records kind of made sense with that $50 million higher actual valuation compared to what we had estimated.
Do you expect that number to change between now and June 30th?
No, not for the real property. The motor vehicles will, that levy is added each month as people get their, registration renewals and such. But the real property is set at this point, pretty much. It may be very small changes, but not anything significant at this point.
Okay.
But the real property levy went down? I'm not sure.
We decreased the tax rate ½ cent.
There you go, okay. That
Yep.
explains it. There you go.
All right, then we'll move over to the final column with the general fund budget. With the revenues, we just talked about the ad valorem taxes, those are on track. The sales tax revenues are a little bit behind budget at pace at this point. Q3 is typically the slowest month, or the lowest month, or the lowest quarter in terms of those collections. And at this point, it is also all estimated amounts because we have not actually received those. Now at this point by May, we have received some of them. But as of March 31st, we haven't actually received the payments or know the actuals for January, February, and March sales. The first quarter refund that I had mentioned in the memo I had sent out yesterday is also a big driver in why the sales tax is less than, or kind of trailing a little behind what we had budgeted this year. Other revenues are pretty well ahead of budget and where we were at last year. That's primarily permit and fee revenues, I think driven by sandstone and renovations at the Carolina Hotel, what we've collected in permit and fee revenues from those projects. And our investment income is chugging along and definitely on pace to exceed our budget this year, even though we had increased it at the mid-year amendment, really driven by higher cash balances and interest rates remaining higher than we had estimated in the budget. With the expenditures, so the first section is just operating expenditures by department, so salaries and benefits and other operating. Within the administration department, we have savings from the assistant village manager and organizational performance director positions. That accounts for the majority of the lower spending there compared to prior year. Police's increase in spending compared to last year is primarily in salaries and benefits. They have higher pay rates plus fewer vacancies this year.
And the total operating expenditures are up 60%. That's a big jump.
They're up 60.
15 million to 24 million.
That's the budget compared to, the 24 million is the budget, and 15 million is the actual. It's not prior year. So through March 31st, we've spent 60% of the total operating expenditure budget.
Last year you were at 63, okay.
Yeah, so overall, it's consistent, and we actually have, in terms of dollars, have spent about 500,000 more compared to the FY24 actuals as of March 31st.
There are two expenditure categories that almost seem like they're at the mid-year point rather than the third quarter. One is the Public Service Administration, and the other was a little further down. I think might have been planning. Any reason there?
Yeah, so within Public Services Administration, we had budgeted for a new stormwater technician position this fiscal year that has not been filled yet.
Thank you.
Yep, that's the primary driver there. And
Dana, also, there was a vacant assistant public
yes,
services director
for a few months. Yeah.
Okay.
And what was the other? Planning?
Planning, yeah.
Yes. And so in planning,
Also has a vacant position.
yes, they've had the assistant director,
The person
Position.
went to Aberdeen. yeah.
Supervisor.
planning supervisor, sorry.
Okay.
Planning supervisor position vacant all year.
But the stormwater
And also-
position doesn't pay $400,000.
No. But,
Third quarter.
yeah, so basically, you'd say we're expecting 75% to be spent, and only 51% has
The
been.
budget is for the full year.
The budget is for the
Actuals
full
9
year,
months.
yes.
Makes much more sense.
Okay.
I tell you, I really like this one-page, it's a bit of an eye test.
It is. I'm going to work on that for next time. I figured I'd wait and get some feedback before I
But
twirled over
I
it
would
too
go with
much.
this every time.
But I will try and work on that you don't need a magnifying glass to be able
But
to
you get
read
used
it.
to it, I kind of like it very much. And I particularly like the next page, which has an explanation of each item as you go along. I don't know what other people think about it, but I was particularly impressed
I
with it.
totally agree.
Thank you.
This is a better format than the old format.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe this should be 2 pages, not 1. That would help with the font size and what have you, but
I've got no problem with it. I'm just using 2 sets of glasses. We're fine.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right, and then just want, as far as capital, I just want to make one comment on that.
All right.
Which are, the percentage of budget spent year to date is the same as, or roughly the same as last year. We've spent 45% of the budget through that point, through March 31st. And really, it's just primarily a matter of timing, but the most significant piece of the FY25 budget in capital that has not been spent yet is for the sidewalk projects and some of the significant stormwater projects, the downtown intersection, which those are now encumbered. We have purchase orders, they are underway, and so the hope is that they are substantially completed, if not completed, before the end of the fiscal year, which should significantly reduce the amount that we are carrying forward into FY26. The last few years, we've had some really large carry-forward numbers, but based on where our capital projects are at this point in time that we planned for, we should have the majority of them done and paid for before the end of the year. All right, and then the last section, the harness track and fair barn. I just wanted to make one note with the fair barn. The actuals were covering 79% of the operating expenditures with revenues. That is after the discounts, which are noted there. Last year, that percentage was 84%, and the real driver of that is the discounts are much higher, and that's based on fee rate changes that were made in FY25. The FY25 fair barn rates that took what was a separate package and just rolled it in and made it kind of one fee rate for for entities other than nonprofits, but the nonprofit rate remained the same at $1,500.
Had a good deal.
And the way we calculate that discount is the regular rate minus the $1,500 the nonprofits are paying, that's the discount. And since that gap got larger, the discounts are significantly higher.
Think about that. I guess someone will think about that, right?
For FY26, the FY26 fee rates, actually, we did increase the
Okay.
nonprofit rate by $1,000, so it will help close that gap a little bit. But just,
Much more equitable, yeah, right.
yes, so just know that's kind of how that's calculated and why it got so much larger. Did not look into whether the number of nonprofit events is significantly different or not, but I know that the gap in the fee rate is, I think, maybe almost double what it was previously.
Limited time sale.
Yes. All right, any other questions?
Right here.
Yeah, great.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. That leads us to item D, presentation of the draft fiscal year 2026 strategic operating plan and budget for the Village of Pinehurst, an announcement of the May 27th, 2025 public hearing on the fiscal year 2026 strategic operating plan and budget for the Village of Pinehurst. Doug,
Yep, so normally we would present the budget this meeting, but since in our work session, we're going to be having discussions that will most likely affect the budget, we will not go into detail on this, but we did want to announce that there will be the public hearing next meeting. At that meeting, I will give a thorough presentation on the budget. We'll have the hearing. If we feel like we also need to hold another public hearing, even after that date, we can do that as well. But I think the plan of presenting and holding a public hearing next meeting will work fine.
and obviously, we're hoping that the public hearing will have a more finalized document, I guess. Is that what we're thinking?
Yeah, so we had finalized a document based on our conversation at the last meeting in April. If we don't change anything, that document stands.
Sure.
If we change something, we will update that, and it will be available for the public hearing.
Okay.
But I think that the changes that we'll discuss later today are more with respect to the 5-year outlook than they are the 1-year.
Right, the budget is separate. yeah.
Dana certainly hopes so.
Yes.
We do not want to upset Dana.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so is there, obviously in the work session, we have some specific items to go over, the potential capital projects, the recommendations from the Fire Birdie process, and anything else that we want to take up there. I was, in preparing for this, I thought about how we can sort of address these dozen, I went back to your email, and there's about a dozen items listed there. And I thought of 8 of them I viewed as sort of low-hanging fruit that I don't think will require much discussion. And then there were the other 4 that deal with the downtown parking, public services complex, the fire facility, and the West Pinehurst Park.
Sure.
Does that sound about right as how you would view those groups?
Yeah, I had it the other way, talk about the big ones first.
Oh, well, I'm not fussy about the order. I was trying to, thinking that the low-hanging fruit might give us momentum and so forth. So I don't, I don't know if we wanted to discuss now the low-hanging fruit ones, or you want to just, we could go on to other business and then.
Yeah, I'd say go on to other business and we can handle all in that
Okay,
item
sounds
or
fair to
work
me.
session.
We will come back to that topic when we go into the work session. But before we do that, are there other business?
Just one
Go ahead.
last comment on this. I would, admitting that it's a draft and things may change, I would congratulate you on further shortening it versus the document last year. I think we can do more in that, but it certainly is a start. And The sections that I read that I think the members of the public might be interested in, I think are better. So I think we're moving in the right direction there.
Yeah, we did shorten the actual standard operating plan book. Our intent was originally to also create like a separate 1 or 2 page summary, just so people who don't do this for a living might actually read that.
Good idea.
So depending on how things go tonight, we'll see how much time we have available to do that.
Okay. All right. Any other items other than other business? Go ahead.
I just have one question. Doug, you were kind enough to post on Hot Topics some STR information from April. And you mentioned now we're getting responses on letters. And I'm curious to know if you have a plan for updating on Hot Topics and when it might be, et cetera.
Yeah, so we have, we created a standing meeting to update those numbers every month, so I plan on updating them every month shortly after that meeting.
Others on other business, Jack? Nope. Dr. Morgan?
We have heard a few complaints by folks concerning, again, back to the deer issue, and the deer eating plants and flowers and things like that in people's gardens. And basically the rub is we push a lot for Pinehurst beautification and making sure that we have a nice area to live in, and we've got ordinances on the different ways yards need to be presented, things like that. But the adequacy of fencing and things like that is felt to be lacking by many folks. In other words, we can't defend against the deer, yet we're trying to make sure the place is beautiful. So where can we reach that happy medium? And I would ask that at some point in time that we have on a work session, just to be able to talk about this, be able to talk about the current ordinances, exactly what they are, and look at what, to what degree that there is defensive aspects with fencing and stuff like that for people's yards.
Barb, you worked on that issue a bit too, didn't you?
Yeah, we worked on them together, but that was more of that was more offensive. How about that? This is now defensive. So.
Yeah. So
I hear that same thing, and I think it would be helpful to take a look at it.
for the most part, our fence regulation limits it to like 6 feet, so deer can jump over 6 feet.
And bottom line is they're getting in there the flowers on a regular basis. And I also heard one statistic I had not verified, but that our deer are bigger than others. And I didn't know if that's because they're eating more flowers or not. But ultimately, there's a significant. I'm hearing more than one person complain about this, and I think that we need to talk about a defensive aspect to this and how do we protect it against the deer in that regard, and what can.
Well, let's definitely put it on an agenda. Doug, maybe in June, because the next May meeting might be crowded, but if that works for you, Dr. Moore?
Yeah, I think I just don't want it to fall off our radar.
Okay.
Okay, we've dealt with this before.
We have not actually implemented what the village intends to implement in West Pinehurst Park yet.
understand for
I'm
that
not saying we
part.
shouldn't discuss it, that's not my point.
And that the West Pinehurst Park is away from the majority of places that are also dealing with this. So we're talking about fencing, we're talking about what our ordinance says. Our regulations are also causing some issues. Our regulations, the regulatory environment we have on fencing, some of the people think that those are too extreme and it prevents them from being able to protect against the deer. And so I'm not willing to make a judgment on this. I'm just telling you I'm hearing this, and I think it's worthwhile for us to talk about it and keep it on our radar. Okay.
I think we're in all agreement on that, and we'll look for the right date in June, hopefully. Okay. Other business, anything else? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the regular meeting.
Okay.
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's adopted. We will break until 6 o'clock. Does that sound fair?
Yep.
Okay.